All right, good morning, everyone. We're very happy this morning to have a discussion teed up with Ben Bensaou, who is a professor. And tell us about the school, Ben, that you're the business professor of.
So it's called INSEAD. It's a business school located in near Paris. I mean, south of Paris. We also have a campus in Singapore, in Abu Dhabi, and a research hub in San Francisco. So it's a
Excellent.
global business school.
Excellent. So you've got quite a background in business, which we'll learn about through the discussion we're going to have this morning. Ben has written a fascinating book called Built to Innovate, which really is kind of an interesting idea that I probably have not directly heard of in the past. It's the idea of embedding innovation everywhere in the organization. Now, as simple as that sentence was to say, I'm sure there's just tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy involved in changing an organization to put in a position to do that. So maybe you can start us off, Ben, by telling us why you chose to write a book on innovation and in this new sense.
Right. Actually, what happened to me, all in all, I've spent about 20 years doing research and teaching and doing some consulting on innovation, in particular helping companies to build their innovating capabilities. And along the way, I studied close to 100 companies, organizations, I should say, not companies, because I also looked at public services, and I studied companies around the world in different industries, from startups in Silicon Valley to small, medium-sized enterprises, all the way to actually large industrial conglomerates, specifically in Japan, in Korea, and Turkey. And along the way, I came across some quite fascinating companies that had proactively transformed themselves into innovating powerhouses. So these were not originally very innovating companies, but they proactively transformed themselves. And when I started to look at them, to my surprise, many of these companies were old established companies operating in very traditional industries. And that was really surprising to me. And that's basically the reason why I thought of writing a book and telling their stories, trying to document some of their key insights. And as well as an academic, the idea was to try to codify what I had learned in the form of new concept frameworks and actually an integrated toolkit I developed along the way. Yeah.
So quite a number of companies have been able to make the transition. You've looked at some of them very, very closely. And before we get into any case studies, is it fair to say that this came naturally to companies, or did they have to engage a big, big cultural shift in order to do it?
Well, that's an interesting question. In a sense, I've seen both models. I've seen top-down models where it came basically from the top, and the agenda was really to do a cultural change and really to cascade it down in the organization. And I can talk also about what some examples or the model that happened. But I've seen also bottom-up processes where at the local level, some middle manager created some interesting new business or did something quite innovative that attracted the attention, and in a way it made some other people jealous. And basically, when people started to kind of learn what this middle manager did very, very well, what was right about what he did, the organization looked at it and started to institutionalize it. So this was much more of a bottom-up approach where other people wanted to, as you say in America, I want to be like Mike, So other people wanted to actually be as innovative than this little unit, and so much more bottom-up. But the model what they did in both ways, whether it's bottom-up or top-down, actually is quite similar.
So I'd like to jump to a very fundamental question before we get into specific examples. Uh, what is the primary difference in thinking between a high innovation company and a ordinary company? In other words, what are the primary tenets of the idea of being built to innovate?
I would say it comes from this very simple belief that, I mean, we all know it, but we don't act upon it, is that anybody can be innovative, basically. Everybody has has an innovative capability. It's just a question of giving people permission to innovate, giving them some support, some tools, probably some training, and to create an environment, actually a protected, fully legitimized environment where they can innovate. I think this is kind of what is in common in the thinking, if you will, in the premise that I've seen in this organization. Some companies, and also the big difference is that once this realization was made, the important thing is to actually create something that jumpstarts what I call the innovating engine, that really formalizes it. I've seen quite a number of companies where the desire or the wishful thinking about becoming more innovative translates into speeches, into admonishment, telling people be more innovative, but I saw the difference. Those companies that succeeded to actually operate this transformation, they did some very concrete things. They actually created some. I mean, I can talk about this. Some structures, some processes. It was a very proactive action. It didn't happen simply by telling people, "Oh, be more innovative," or we want you to be more innovative, or I mean, and then you have the other extreme where you see a lot of organizations where there's an implicit belief that innovation comes from senior leaders, or it comes from some specialists in R&D or in new product development. Their job is to innovate. And when I start to ask employees in these companies, where does innovation lie in your organization? They immediately point to the specialist, and they don't see themselves as being the people who should be innovating. But when you ask them who should innovate in the company, everybody answers the same thing. Everybody should be innovating, but there's no system for it. There's no processes for it. So this is what is different about this organization that I identified.
So, and I just want to follow up on that because, again, having run a company myself for 25 years, a smaller company, but nonetheless, we had customer service, we had software development, we had finance, we had the management group, et cetera, et cetera. But, and again, this probably will sound a little bit condescending, and it will fit into your stereotype of the way most people think. Is it really possible for, let's say, a clerical person doing a rote kind of job to become an innovator?
Well, okay, so this is a very, very interesting question. So let's not debate whether initially, as a human being, people have innovating capabilities or not. I mean, I don't want to go back to the notion that if you look at children, they're very creative, very innovative. That it's once you get into an educational system, once you get into an organization where your innovative, creative capability is kind of constrained or stopped in a sense, right, hampered. Now, for me, anybody who has a customer, internal or external, or the customer could be a process, by the way, then that person can innovate. It's just a question of reminding this person, and it could be a clerical person. A clerical person can start to have new ideas about how to do the job different. If this person has a customer, internal or external, they can start to develop an alertness and mindfulness about understanding the customer in a different way, trying to understand maybe the desires, the pain points, the wishes of these customers. So I think that once you help people switch the mind from the usually supply side view. This is my company, the competitors, we're competing, we're trying to outperform the competition, we are obsessed with the industry. Or internally, I look at what I'm doing, but I'm so focused on what I'm doing, the job description, doing the task, that I somewhat kind of not necessarily forget, but I don't have the same sense, acute sense of trying to understand the customer. And then when it comes to business, I can even add non-customers, but we can get to this later. But so to answer to your question, it's very simple. Anybody who has a customer should be able to innovate if we give them, I usually say, the tools. First the permission, and also some kind of tools, very simple tools about how to switch and learn how to listen to what I call the voice to the customer, and also the silence of the customer. What your customer doesn't tell you, not either because they don't know of their problem, or the pain point they have, or the desire they might have, they don't verbalize it, or because they have a problem, they know about it, but they don't think that you're the person or you're the company to solve that problem for them. So they don't talk to you about it. So it is about developing this skill. And in the same way, to come back to your earlier question, the same way people develop skills and competencies to execute their job, what is their task they're initially paid for, they can learn how to train this other muscle, which is the innovating muscle, if you will. And maybe I should be careful here, if you allow me, to kind of define what I mean by innovating, because I make a clear distinction between the word innovation, in English as a noun, and innovating as a verb. So this comes from years of teaching, and I've noticed talking to people about innovation that the word innovation itself was very intimidating. It tended to create a sense of anxiety and stress, in particular when you talk to people at the front line. And also, I can tell you, teaching many years, I find that people who come to the innovation training programs, they think that their boss expects them to come back, and develop a new breakthrough, new product, or to discover a new marketplace, and the pressure. I feel the pressure is on, and people don't like that. So what I started to do, George, is that I started to not use the word innovation at all. And instead, I use the word innovating, or simply the verb to innovate. So we're not here to learn about innovation. We're here to learn how to innovate. And I saw a major shift in the way people reacted. And the reason why, I think, is that innovating, or the verb to innovate, refer to an action, a process, a set of behaviors that can be learned and practiced. So that's why when I say a clerk can innovate, because it's simply about the process. It's not about necessarily finding an innovation. So for me, innovating, I lower the bar, because you want everybody to be engaged, right? So even a clerk. So I'm not asking a clerk to come up with an innovation. I'm saying the clerk can engage in activities where he or she is looking for a new idea that creates value for that customer that we were talking about, whether it's internal or external, and a value for the company. So as soon as you lower the bar, that it is about looking for new ideas, and of course we need to train them in thinking properly about what is a good idea, how to look for a new idea, because the idea, in essence, is in the customer. We're not talking about artistic creativity. We're talking about commercial innovation. So it means that the need or the desire is there. It's in the life of a customer. It's in the mind or the heart of a customer. So it's a question of discovering it. It's much more of a discovery process than anything else. So again, my position is to say that this can be trained. This can be learned. People can be trained. And
got it. And again, I think this is still foundational. The opportunities to innovate come in all sorts of places we might not expect in the normal course of business. And from taking a brief look at your book, I would call them vectors of opportunity, and the vectors of opportunity are constrained typically because of the way people think or are absorbed in their everyday work. And even if you're thinking of innovating internally, your mind is fairly constrained or locked into what you do now. So the product that we have, whatever it may be, if we build tires, where all of our thinking is on building tires, and we don't, let's say, decompose the things that we do in such a way to think, well, this element could be used in an entirely different way, which is one of the big learnings of the book, is that you can take a given chemistry or a given product or whatever it might be, and you may be so linear in your thinking that you're only thinking of its current application and current use, that that's you can make that better, and everybody wants to make that better, but maybe there's something to the left or to the right, or even on the other side of the world, you might say, that's going to benefit from something you've uncovered in a completely different way. So, and that's just internally, and then that can project out beyond. Well, so there's multiple vectors of opportunity internally, but likewise, there's vectors of opportunity externally to customers, because you only think you know what customers are thinking. Customers are thinking of their own priorities and their own daily workflows and needs and requirements, and thinking of their future. And if you're only thinking of your future, you're going to completely miss those things that the customer really wants and needs. And even there's like a third opportunity there. So you've been doing your innovation, the customer is uncovering their needs, but your competitors are also bringing in a completely different approach or vector that might be similar to yours, but in fact is either broader or more acutely focused, or more relevant to the needs across a playing field. Perhaps you've chosen a niche and the playing field is actually a very wide playing field, and you're missing big opportunities in that playing field. So all of these things, again, from the initial portion of your book, come into play in terms of the benefits of this new approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, following on what you say, you can even sometimes find something that the customer doesn't even know about. So you can actually solve a problem that they don't even know. They wouldn't even think about it. So I think the way you put it, it's really that, well, at least what I found in these kind of highly innovating companies is that they created a separate time and space for people to escape what I call the execution engine. So this notion that this is our market, this is the people we're competing on. So the focus is really on delivering, on competing, and the idea is to try to create another space. Again, I repeat, it has to be protected, fully legitimized, where people can actually switch their mind and focus really on uncovering needs, I mean, of customers, but also on non-customers, because sometimes you learn what stretches your mind, what helps you think outside of the box, is people who are not enjoying your product or even your industry at all. So this is what I found different, is that people understood that you can innovate in everything you do, in your products. I mean, even for an external product customer, in your products, in your processes, you can innovate in your functions, but you have to create this space where people can escape this supply side view of the world and turn it around and be focused on the customer. And it's very difficult to do both at the same time. So that's why many of these companies did what I found somebody like Walt Disney did a long time ago. I tracked this and I found that what he used to do is he used to have different rooms within the buildings. There were like some rooms, they were called reality rooms, and there were like some other rooms, they were called dream rooms. So what he would do is take a team into the dream room. And of course, the dream room has different objective, different rules of engagement, different objective. But the objective is to actually create new ideas, to find out what could we do to marvel the audience. And then they would just pick a few of those ideas and then move to another room, which would be called the reality room. And this reality room is about, very brutally try to execute some of these ideas. And this is not about innovating. This is about execution, implementing. And I think this is what I found these companies doing. I mean, they didn't necessarily know about Walt Disney, but this is what they ended up doing is on top of the execution machinery or engine that they had, they created this time and space where fundamentally anyone could participate, anyone could engage in this process of looking for new ideas. Now, there's no guarantee as to what you will find, but at least people were invited, encouraged to participate, to engage in this exercise of looking for new ideas. And that's what I call innovating.
So one of maybe we can segue to some of the case studies that you're quite familiar with. We're aware of companies like 3M being familiar with, the Post-it note. That's a world famous story about someone coming up with a Post-it note. And I think you talk about BASF. But one of the most interesting ones, at least in the beginning, was Gore. And maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about them. I've heard of Gore-Tex. I've had garments that were Gore-Tex, but maybe you could round that out.
I mean, Gore did something really interesting. I mean, fundamentally, like you said, 3M did the thing, but the most important thing is really that they created a space, they legitimized a space, and it was totally legitimate to engage in these innovating activities. And I think this is really the important message to get from Gore beyond. I mean, I think people are very familiar with some of the products they developed, but I think the important thing was the organizational structure that they created for that. And I think this is again what I found. I think Gore, everybody was familiar with Gore, but then, when I found that it happened also in other companies that people were not familiar with, or like in industries, where people would not suspect that they're highly innovative beyond the R&D. This is where it becomes really fascinating. I don't know if you had a chance to read the example of Bayer, for instance. I mean, we know about Gore. Very few people know about the example of Bayer, but Bayer also created a formal structure for innovating. So they had this, this formidable R&D capability that everybody knows, with fantastic achievements, scientific achievements. But in 2014, they decided to create a separate, let's say, organization to leverage the innovating capability of the 100,000 employees in the company. And what they did first, they made the whole board responsible for innovation. And then they selected 80 senior executives from across different regions and global functions to support the board as innovation ambassadors. And then, very similar to other organizations I saw, they trained and certified 1,000 innovation coaches, which were activated across the organization. And this is the unit. And I saw this at Bayer, I saw it at BASF, I saw it at Samsung, I saw it in many organizations. These are, coaches which are activated and can help middle managers who have a team who wants to, explore a new idea and they don't know how to do this. So these coaches are sent to support these people through the process, train them in some new tools. And then actually there's another interesting thing also, which I saw in other organizations, but just to give you the example of Bayer, they created something they called WeSolve. So WeSolve is a digital platform where anybody in the company, so we're talking about 100,000 employees, can post a problem that they're facing. And they can invite ideas and insights from anybody across the world. Now, what was really interesting, George, is that they told me that not only 40,000 people had engaged, participated in WeSolve, but they gave me another statistics, which I think for me is even more impressive. They found that two-thirds of the solutions that were posted on WeSolve, the solutions came from a business unit or a function different from where the problem was posted in the first place. So this is what I would like to talk. I was trying to talk about, is that they were really able to tap into the innovating capability that was lying in other parts of the organization. It was not even coming from the same division or the same business unit. So that's really the kind of thing.
So that really makes sense, though, when you think about it, because again, if you think of business units as very linear, then you're introducing an orthogonal approach that allows people that think in a whole different domain. They think about things differently. It's just like the difference between trying to ask engineers to solve a problem and then asking the marketing department to solve a problem. Well, there's probably light years of difference in the way the
yes, absolutely. I mean, a good example I saw in the auto industry, if you ask metallurgy, people who specialize in metals, to solve a problem, they're going to come with a certain solution. But if you ask plastics engineers, they're going to come with a very different solution, different form, different even logic behind the solution. So I think this is really the idea of building this innovating engine, is really to tap the capabilities that happen, all around the organization. And it's what I've noticed in studying all these organizations is that it's basically, you say lying there all the time. It's all there, but nobody is tapping it. So if you will, the metaphor would be, of course, you have some geniuses. They score maybe 100 on the creativity scale. But how many of those do you have? But then you have a lot of people who, with some training, with some permission, with some coaching, might get to maybe 20, 25. Or maybe even 10. But how many of these you have? You have the whole organization. So that's kind of the intuition behind Build to Innovate, is to say, if you can tap and leverage this capability that is lying around the organization, try to elevate a little bit the capability by training and as you say, getting people to talk to each other, and that you might have quite a significant innovation capability. And that's what the book is about. It's really about, I made the distinction, remember, between innovation and innovating. So for me, if you use the well-known metaphor about the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. So if you think of innovation as the tip of the iceberg, the impressive peak, that is above, emerging above the water level, then innovating and the innovating capability is what happens under the surface.
Yeah.
And
So
it is the collective individual capability of all the individuals in the organization that is lying there, waiting to be activated. So that's what it is about.
even geniuses can have tunnel vision. So, right?
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
someone more in touch with what the client or customer is looking for may recognize something that tremendous innovative person is missing. I'd like to get into two aspects of this, if it's okay. The first is you allude to a piece of software. I think it was called WeSolve software.
Yes, yes.
But so what's the state today, from your understanding, of software specifically designed to foster innovating? And so one company builds a product for internal use. Are there third parties that have gone after this as a marketplace to create a tool that could be implemented, an effective tool?
Well, again, this is interesting problem that we all develop some wishful thinking that maybe the technology will solve the creativity problem or the innovation problem. I think what I see is that you have a lot of software that helps innovators or people who have ideas communicate. So this is more of a channeling device or a connecting device, but per se, it does not necessarily generate ideas. It can stimulate. So for instance, some of the tools that I have developed to help people innovate now, we have developed some chat GPT function that helps people challenge the ideas they come up with, or have an additional advisor who can look at the customer insights from a data driven point of view. But yes, I mean the technology can support. And by the way, the reason why, when I looked at what they were doing, they showed me they had WeSolve, but within WeSolve, it's a platform. They had other functions. One which was, well, we ideate, and there was some very interesting data that showed that when you ask people to submit a question, you get a lot of participation from around the organization, because anybody who can have an idea about how to solve the problem, wherever they come from, they can submit. And that can expand the type of solutions that you may come up with. But when they were asking people to submit ideas, that only people who were relating to this idea would actually participate. So it would be a kind of a much closer community of people who are focusing on that particular problem or interested in that particular idea. So I thought that
excuse me. So the way I see this is, and by the way, we were a software development company building
yeah.
sales incentive software. So we had literally thousands of development ideas in our software management, in our development management system. And to me, one of the biggest problems is, I mean, you're and using your methodology and your recommendation is going to generate untold number of ideas. And And let's just be simplistic for a minute, as you just did, and let's just say 75% of the information flow is solving, question, problem and answer, suggestion. But then there's a whole other aspect that involves new ideas, software development, product ideas, and so on and so forth. So it would seem to me in a large Fortune style company, you're going to suddenly uncover tens of thousands of opportunities for either new products or new tweaks to the software or new ways of relating to the clients and customers. So, but even if I was just thinking of software, because today so much of business lies in software, there's got to be a triage at some
Oh,
point,
yes.
uh,
Yes.
because there's you can have an untold number of interesting, I'm going to use the word interesting ideas, but not probably 5 or 8% of those interesting ideas are profound ideas that are life-changing ideas. And either way, you can as much as you can enable in an organization, it would seem to me it would be easily possible to paralyze an organization trying to do too many things that are beyond the scope of the resource equation. So
Okay. Yes, very, very, very interesting. What I get, like what I've seen, one is especially once you give permission to people to innovate or to generate ideas, you'll get lots of input. And as you say, some idea, most of the ideas are not necessarily interesting, and it's not because people are not they're malicious. It's because they don't know how to think about the ideas. So I think this is where one of the first things to do when you create this innovating space is to give people some simple guidance or training to help them learn how to think about their own ideas. So there, I can tell you the story of a Japanese manager whom I trained a long time ago, and we showed him a tool, and then of course when he went back, he didn't want to share the tool with his employees because that's not the way Japanese function. They don't like consulting tools and business school professors. But what he did, which was very interesting, is that he remembered the 3 questions that the tools were signifying. And he kept saying the same thing to his people. And then when I interviewed his people, they had noticed something had changed about him after the training. So if somebody came to him with a new idea, well, interestingly, the first thing he did is actually to thank the person for bringing the idea, which was really interesting because he kind of acknowledged people's ideas, even if they were very bad. So then what he would say is that, oh, this sounds like an interesting idea, but can you help me understand why would the customer like this idea? And by this simple question, he would anchor the employee into thinking from the customer side and not from the company side. And then, of course, if the person would know, he wouldn't start to yell at the person. He would say, "Okay, why don't you go and ask or observe a customer and try to tell me why the customer would like it." Then when the person would come, he would ask the second question, which is, what should be the cost to the customer? What should be the price? I mean, if you're talking about a product, because you're trying to maximize the value to the customer minus the price, which is, why would the customer like the idea? And then the third, when the people would answer that, he would ask, what should be our cost structure? How should we manage our own cost structure so that we can deliver this? And I thought that these 3 questions were training his people in the discipline of thinking about the value to the customer first, then how would the company benefit from that? And I think this very simple, mental discipline would actually help with the triage. I think it would take care of a lot of. And by the way, I found this really interesting, George. After a few months, I went back and interviewed him and his employees, and he told me that now, after a few months of him always asking the same question, I mean, he was really obsessed by this. He was asking these three questions in the same order. Then people would come to see him and say, "Boss, I think I have a great idea, and the customer is going to like it for this." And they would actually have internalized
Yeah.
that logic. So for me, even a clerk can learn a mental discipline about how to assess their own idea. And that would weed out a lot of, very bad ideas. Then, of course, you're totally right. Once you're operating not in the execution engine, but in the innovating engine, a very important process that has to be embedded with people in charge of it to curate the process is, the typical, winnowing, channeling, selecting process where I mean, it's usually a funnel process, stage gate process, to make sure that we focus on some of the important ideas. So that has to, and some companies, what they would do is because, I mean, actually, the best example I had was BSF. They developed an information system that would allow people to post ideas. And after about a month, the system was launched. I went back to them and said, how did it go? And they said the system was overloaded the first month. But then after a few months, it started to actually go down. And what we found out is that people would send an idea. Then a few weeks later, they would send another idea. And of course, there's a lot of emotion when people send an idea. They're very proud of their idea. And then 3 times, 4 times, no answer, no feedback. So they stopped sending. So what they changed now is that for the system, they have a local coordinator. At the local unit level, there's somebody who's not a boss, somebody lateral, who actually reviews the ideas and gives a first feedback within 15 days. And then, of course, those ideas that go through the first filter, the first triage, as you call it, then they move to a much more formal process, which is quite brutal because there, you have to show your case. I mean, it's not just an idea, you have to develop the case.
You might find it interesting that even in my small organization, which again was anywhere from 25 to 30 individuals in my company, we developed our own system for this exact purpose. Not so much, let me be clear, we did not directly have an innovating, facilitating system, but organically opportunities would come up all the time. And because we were very software centric, let's say at any given moment, to my earlier point, there would be 600 to 1,000 software development opportunities in a 30-person company. All right. And so you have a system designed to manage software development, which is sort of, at least the one we were using, was inadequate by itself to prioritize those projects. You just have this amalgamation of everything in a big lump, which is extremely difficult to be effective managing. So what we did was we did an export of that entire system every week. And by the way, we were Agile Scrum kind of methodology. But we put it into Excel, and every one of the projects or development initiatives, small or large, we put into 6 different columns. One was bug fix, one was client requested project, one was core product development, and there were 3 other, I won't go into all of them, but but
But who would classify it? The person who had the idea would put themselves in a column.
well, we actually had a project manager that
Okay,
was
who would do that?
responsible for the categorization. But once we got them categorized, we then, as a management team, we would meet weekly and we would look at the totality of it. But we called, my name for it was silo stack. And so each
Okay.
of these was a silo, and
Hmm.
we had to look at it, and well, and we had to say, we're never going to do this. It doesn't make sense, or this is super high priority. And,
Okay.
and by the
Yeah.
way, one of the columns was customer requested development, and then there's another one which is core product development. And
Okay.
in a software group where you have maybe 12 people,
Hmm.
you just can't follow the rabbit hole down all these things at
Mm,
once.
mm, mm,
And
mm,
so
mm.
there's some client projects that needed to get rejected, and there's some internal projects that needed to get back burnered. And you know, we wanted to concentrate, let's say, on the top 5 or 10 items in each of these silos, because it's just impossible to deal with 600 or 1,000 items. So it actually worked very well. And by meeting with the management group, which was 8 people, meeting with the management group, we would arbitrate and argue and debate the merits of which should come first. And you know, is there to your, you know, to the global point of this discussion, in any of these categories, there could be significant innovative ideas. And
Mhm,
so,
mhm.
but you're still balancing between the new and the innovative and the execution engine, because you
Right.
cannot abdicate the
Absolutely.
execution engine.
Absolutely. But so this is very simple. I mean, this is what you're talking about is what I've seen is that it's basically at different scales, but the same process of selecting, filtering, and large organizations would have bigger machinery to manage this channeling, and small firms have a bit of an advantage because uh, uh, everybody is closer to the customer. So everybody, understands and can make a qualification or an assessment of these ideas. You don't need as much of I mean, the organization is flatter, so it can go faster, and people at the top, they're aware of everything. But as soon as you become a large organization, people start to become a bit isolated and removed from the front line, but you can still need to build a machinery to do the triage, to do the filtering.
And
Um,
before I described our own system, I just wanted to say you addressed what I think was probably very important, is you have all these ideas flowing, and you will lose credibility rapidly if you don't respond to them and don't make people
Absolutely,
feel
absolutely,
honored
absolutely.
for making their
But
contribution.
yeah, yeah, and the essence here is really um, to leverage these ideas because they're there. Without it, they get lost. Basically, people will still have these ideas, but if they don't have, they're not encouraged to submit them. And it's also the question of developing the skills of the people, because by simply asking them, encouraging them, this is all voluntary, of course, to submit ideas and getting reviewed, it sharpens their skills. I mean, on top of it, it makes their job more interesting. I mean, remember the clerk you were talking about doing a rote skill. If suddenly he or she can think about different ways of doing the job or enlarging the job, or even by the way, contributing to a key product. What I found working with teams doing these innovating projects is that you never know in a team who's going to have that catalytic idea, and it's not always the people we think. Sometimes people who are a bit shy or subdued or not central to the product might have the most naive perspective and pick something in the customer that all the specialists are completely blinded to. So I would not kind of necessarily make any assumptions about who is going to be a better contributor into these teams. But what is important is really to allow for these ideas to pop up. I mean, it's better to have them and then eliminate than rather, just focus on only the senior leaders to come up with the ideas, or some of the smartest people in the company.
Yes. And then the other thing we don't want to fail to acknowledge is that senior leadership has to be really bought into any such initiative, because so many times a grassroots initiative will get started and then lose its steam because the CEO or the top VPs don't really believe in it. So you've just got to get everybody on the same page. And we're almost at an hour here, Ben. So
oh my goodness, it goes so fast.
Yeah. Do you have a couple of thoughts here on summarizing the high points of what's most important to remember here?
Yeah, I guess my kind of general thought here is to just kind of tell people to stop thinking that innovation has to come from senior leaders, or only the specialist, or that you need to be a startup to innovate. Anybody can innovate.
You mean I don't have to be Steve Jobs in order to
Absolutely. You don't need to be Steve Jobs. You don't need to be a genius. I mean, what I tell people in the class is that if you have a genius in the company, please take good care of him or her if you're lucky to have one. But not every company has a chance to have a Steve Jobs. But that doesn't mean you cannot get collective genius. So this is more the idea. Instead of relying on individual genius, which, by the way, is difficult to manage sometimes. And I mean, first to find and to manage and to retain, of course. This is more betting on the collective genius, to recognize that frontline workers, middle managers, and senior leaders all can contribute to this innovating capability. And my sense here, to conclude, is that as you're building this new culture, try to avoid to focus on innovation. I would rather tell people focus on innovating, building the habit, building the capability of everyone looking for new ideas. And then once you have these thousands of ideas, maybe an innovation is in the middle, but you don't want to censure all these ideas. On the contrary, you want to encourage, give permission, encourage, support people to come up with ideas. And it will also make their jobs much more interesting.
Yeah, and one of the things that several of the companies in your case studies in the book, I'll hold it up one more time, Built to Innovate, but most of the companies that really have adopted this thought process give people time and freedom and
Absolutely.
flexibility in order to pursue great ideas. And even if they're not great ideas, they still get the same time and flexibility so that that creativity can occur. So that's another great insight.
And if you think of it as a muscle, again, the more you use it, the better you get. Basically, the more people, which is very interesting, because when we even look at geniuses, usually they are repeat innovators. The people who are very creative, usually they have lots of innovations. They are serial innovators. So I think that if people start small, train, develop a small idea, then get involved because they did something interesting in a bigger project, get recognition, and then get called into a big new kind of new product, a new business project. People will grow their innovating muscle, and that will contribute to the company's innovating muscle as well.
Well, I think we've had a great discussion, Ben. We are
Thank you.
almost
I
at
enjoyed
that
it.
hour mark. I think it's a very engaging discussion, and
Thank you.
let's just give you an opportunity. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Or you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. And then I have a website. I mean, a website for my work, but also the book is there. So it's called benbensao.com.
Thank you very much. And just for my own little nickel advertisement, this is George Kriza hosting today, CEO of Challenging Decisions, a consulting firm designed to assist CEOs to solve very difficult problems. And hopefully we can bring that to bear for you. And once again, we appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you, Ben.